freedom means and to find solutions. So let's let Acapulco hear you. Take a deep breath with me, and when you release that breath, let out a nice howl. I promise you'll feel better. I feel better. All right. So I have 30 minutes to cram in a lot of ideas. I always bring a lot of good ideas, a lot of big ideas and solutions. I know you guys are here for solutions, right? Who's here to hear solutions, right? So, got 30 minutes to do that. This presentation is probably really an hour long. I will do another version in the future. You guys we can take our time. But I want to get a couple of commercials out of the way real quick. I'm doing a workshop tomorrow evening around 5 p.m. in my hotel room. That's the best place I could find. So anybody wants to come hang out with me in my hotel room? 12:30 is floor number 12. It's called Creating Freedom Now, Agorism, Counter-Economics, and Freedom Cells. And if those words don't mean anything to you, they might by the end of this talk. So check that out. And I'm also doing a documentary premiere tonight. It's a world premiere just for the Acapulco audience. It's a documentary called Who Will Find What the Finders Hide. And just briefly, it's about a cult from the 80s that's tied to the CIA, human trafficking, and pedophilia. And I think I have been able to expose the truth about them. So if you want to see that, that'll be tonight at the Red Pill Theater, $10, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. So we got the commercials out of the way now. So I know some of you are unfamiliar with my work and who I am and what I do, so I'll give you the brief rundown. I've practiced this. I've condensed about 30 years of history into 2 minutes. Are you ready for this? So, grew up very depressed, tried to kill myself several times, visiting my birth father in prison, got into drugs when I was 18, was addicted to drugs for a few years. By the time I turned 21, was addicted to crystal meth, went to prison, discovered meditation in prison, started changing my life around. When I got out of prison, I read a book by Jim Marrs, read a book by Ron Paul, watched a documentary. My life was never the same again. Started doing activism in Houston, got into journalism, started a website called The Conscious Resistance. I've written several books on the ideas we're going to explore today, and I do public speaking. Good enough? So that's the short version, right? Obviously, there's a lot of details in there that we're going to get into. And as I mentioned, my website, well, one other note, I do talk fast because I think fast. So if I start talking too fast for you, you can just kind of like wave me in a little bit and I'll try to slow down. So my website, and I guess the movement you could say that I've been working on building for the last 6 years is called The Conscious Resistance, right? That term to me is essentially the idea, the realization, the recognition that the struggle for a more free and ethical world is not going to come from the physical manifestations of power by confronting them, right? Obviously, we need to confront police, we need to confront corporate power, we need to confront the state, we need to be aware of the problems in the world. But that's only one half of the struggle that we're in. The other half is the internal struggle against our own internal tyrant, our doubts, fears, and insecurities. And I don't care who you are and how big you are on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, or what big stage you speak on, we all have doubts, fears, and insecurities. That's another reminder I want to give you guys. Throughout the next few days, don't let any of the speakers give you this impression that they are better than you in any way, or that they should be placed on a pedestal. There's a lot of amazing people here, done a lot of good research and have important ideas, but just because I'm standing up here on this stage and you're sitting down there, you're my brothers, you're my sisters, we're all the same, right? So there's no difference. Don't fall into that ego trap, don't let them fall into that ego trap, and don't allow yourself to have blind worship of anybody. We all learn from each other, right? It's important to recognize. So along with that, we each have our own doubts, fears, and insecurities, and they express themselves in different ways. We have different paths, right? The short story I just shared with you guys, it might be different from your upbringing, but I guarantee you we have commonalities, and we can find that common ground. So it's important to recognize that. So as I was going through my depression and prison and kind of starting to unravel my own trauma, I realized, well, holy shit, if I've been suffering in this depression my whole life and unable to see past that, to see the problems in the world, well, then that means my other brothers and sisters who are out there suffering, they haven't been able to come join us yet because they're just trying to make it through another day, right? There was a point where I was just trying to not kill myself that day, right? So you could have come to me and said, hey, have you seen what they're doing to the environment? Have you seen what the police are doing? Have you heard what the state's doing? And I would have listened, I would have believed, but I wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. I was just trying to make it through that day, right? So we have to work on our own internal trauma and heal those traumas that we have and those doubts, fears, and insecurities, and constantly work on that. Work on that self-love. Who here struggles with self-love? All of us, right? It's okay, you don't have to raise your hand. We know it's true. We all struggle in different ways. It's okay, don't worry. So that's what the conscious resistance is about, and more recently I've started to call it a holistic anarchism and holistic activism, and we'll define those terms briefly. So holistic is one of these beautiful, nice sounding words that is often overused or used in different ways that it maybe doesn't apply. I've seen everything from holistic gardening, holistic sex, holistic cat food, holistic, you name it, right? But the term has meaning. Imagine that. Words actually have definitions, and they matter when you use them. So holistic is the idea that any topic, whatever you're studying, should be seen from a perspective of the whole entity. So let's say holistic psychology, right? You study the whole mind. Holistic ecology, instead of just studying the animals or just the trees or just humans, you study it all as one ecosystem, right? One system, and that changes the way you understand something. Holistic medicine, you guys are familiar with this term, studying the whole body instead of just treating the symptom, right? So when I'm talking of holistic activism, I'm talking of coming from a place of proactivity as opposed to being reactive, right? A reactive activist, what I consider most typical activism, is they're doing something over here. Let's run over here and fight it and protest it. Oh wait, they're coming over here. They're dictating the game. They've got us running this way. They're drawing our attention wherever they want, right? We're not being proactive. So two quick examples of that. March Against Monsanto and the Fed marches in the United States. People raising a lot of awareness, going to the streets, protesting, rallying, passing out flyers. And in the case of the March Against Monsanto, when they're done celebrating their marches, they go sit down and they eat their GMO corn chips to celebrate, right? And then you're at the Federal Reserve marches, and people are like, yeah, I want to support, let me buy the End the Fed shirt, and they pull out some Federal Reserve notes and pay with it. They're not thinking holistically, right? They're contributing to the problem, and this is not a judgment. We all do these in different ways, but the holistic message is asking us to take all of these things into consideration. Economics is important. Knowing what's going on in the political world is important, but it's not the end game. The way you live your life is equally important, the relationships you have with other people. Because you can come up here and speak all day about philosophy and know the ins and outs of government and libertarianism and anarchism, but if in your interpersonal relationships you treat people like shit, that's not really living up to the message, right? It's easy to talk a big game, it's much harder to live it. And again, I'm not saying I live it 100% either. I struggle just like every one of you. So that's what I mean when I talk about holistic activism. And of course, in case anybody here ended up at Anarchapulco without knowing what anarchism means, it's simply, and I'm sure there are some, it simply means the idea that it is wrong, immoral, unethical, impractical for another free human being, free, powerful, beautiful human beings like we all are, to impose their will on another person, right? So it removes the idea of centralized authority and obviously government and relationships like that. But it's important to recognize that authoritarianism and violence and aggression, it doesn't always come in the form of the state and the corporation. It's very easy to recognize that. It's a little less easy to recognize it when it's in our own communities, right? But there are people within our own communities, there are speakers on these stages who might display authoritarian tendencies in their own personal relationships, right? And this is not for me to judge anybody else. I think it's up for each of us as strong, empowered individuals to take what I call a holistic self-assessment and to look at each area of your life and to see how much of your life is actually in line with the principles you espouse. You know what I mean? How much of your relationships, your income, where you spend your money, where you get your food, and what type of food is that, all these different areas of your life are just as important to politics and the economics. So, what we're going to focus on today, this is called the sevenfold path of the conscious resistance, or the holistic anarchist, and I'm going to provide you with real-world practical solutions that can work for you both in the sense of physically breaking your chains and also emotionally and spiritually freeing yourself as well. Because as I said, I think I think you are selling yourself short if you only focus on one aspect. I'll say that, okay? And we're going to go through and show each. I'm using the chakras as kind of my guide here. You'll see. Wait, am I supposed to point it this way? There we go. You'll see that as we go through, we're going to talk about one aspect will be on the spiritual, emotional empowerment. The other aspect will give you the physical. So we're going to have essentially 14 steps here. And if you're not comfortable with the idea of chakras, it doesn't really matter. It's just a symbol, right? Use it for what works for you. So let's go through these 7 steps. And I'm going to tear off a piece of paper every time I'm done with one. It's a celebration, right? I've been planning this for a while, and I'm very happy to share with you guys. You guys with me? You with? All right. So mindfulness, I think that's probably the most easiest, but also maybe one of the most difficult step, right? To be mindful, to be aware. Awareness, mindful awareness. This is something that I first started to develop and become aware of when I went to prison. I discovered Zen meditation. Zen Buddhism was one of the first areas that I kind of delved into. Over the years, I've pursued more of my own native heritage and learning from native spirituality, but it all starts with mindfulness, right? None of us would be here if we didn't have some moment of becoming aware that something was wrong, right? We might not necessarily have all the solutions, but we're aware that things are not quite what we believe they could be. And we feel compelled to do something about it, to come to conferences or to meet other people, to post online and do things like that, right? So everything starts with that mindfulness. For me, mindfulness entails, trying to incorporate meditation into my regular routine, trying to practice nonviolent communication, again, removing the authoritarianism from my own relationships and my own communication, but also trying to find ways to just live in a mindful manner in every area, right? So that's a good foundation on the spiritual side, the spiritual element, taking time to be mindful, to contemplate, right? So if you're living a busy life, find 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, beginning of your day, the end of your day. Sit in your favorite chair, sit in your favorite comfortable spot and stop and reflect. Think about what you did from the moment you woke up to the moment you're going to bed, and I promise you that regular practice will start to bring insights to you. And again, instead of being reactive to the world, you can be proactive. Okay, this person said this, they're triggering me, I'm feeling all kinds of ways, I'm catching feelings. Let me look at how I'm feeling, where is this coming from, and you're able to use that introspection. Now, the component on the other side, the physical world, is what I call a foundation. The foundation is establishing critical thinking, right? So once you become mindful and aware of the problems, that's the first step, right? But if you haven't developed skills, like some people might be familiar with the idea of the trivium, which is grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. Also questioning your own biases, questioning your presuppositions, developing critical thinking skills. These are the things that allow us to go down various rabbit holes and not get lost, right? Who spent nights on YouTube or where else just learning about a lot of things, but also kind of coming up empty, like, okay, well, that was interesting. I don't know what I got out of it, but it was sort of fun. But still, I go down those rabbit holes. My documentary is a deep rabbit hole, but I also know that those rabbit holes can be traps. If you just spend your time thinking that things are screwed, there's nothing to do, or you just get lost trying to find the pieces, and meanwhile, you're not building in the real world. You're not empowering yourself, right? You're only just focused on the external, and so that's important. But when you develop critical thinking skills and start questioning your own biases, it's easier to sift through the BS. And as a journalist, it's something that I've tried to develop, as far as possible. And I've realized that there are other people out there struggling to determine, is this real? Is this true? And we live now in the age of fake news. Everything is fake news. If you don't agree with it, you just call it fake news, and that's that, right? So we're all living in different realities now, depending on what truth that you ascribe to. So it's important for you to establish that foundation. Then we have reflection. Again, this to me, I think, could also be termed remembrance. You're in a state of mindfulness. You're able to start asking these questions. You start to reflect, as I said, sitting down 5 minutes a day and thinking about yourself and your day and everything that you want to be, seeing your vision, your goals, and starting to put those into practice. It's essentially, who's heard the idea that remembering is really remembering, putting ourselves back together, right? That's what I think this is about. Like, you get to a state of mindfulness, you start to become self-aware there are problems. Then you start to reflect, like I had to do when I went through, my BS, and as I continue to, and ask myself, well, how the hell did I get here in prison, looking at the calendar and not going home for at least another year? How did I end up becoming exactly the thing that I was angry about, right? How did I end up doing that? And it took long months of reflection and continuous reflection to really understand the roots of my trauma and the roots of my pain, to start healing that. And then education. This is where the education actually starts in the physical world. So you've established your foundation, your critical thinking skills, your rhetoric, your grammar, you've got logic, you're questioning your biases and your presuppositions. Now it's time to learn. Now you go down those rabbit holes and you're able to filter, you're able to have some discernment instead of just being an empty vessel that anybody can pour their truth into. You can say, thank you, but no thank you. That doesn't fit with what I know to be true. I appreciate the information, but that's not correct for me, right? So it's important to establish that foundation and then start building your education. This is probably one of the most important ones. Forgiveness. Who here struggles with forgiveness of self and others? Especially of self, right? I am here to tell you that I have cheated, I have lied, I have physically abused people, I have stolen, I have wronged many people in my life. You go to parts of Houston, you ask people about me, they won't have too many nice things to say. I built a bad reputation in my younger years. And that's just being completely honest with you guys. That's something I'm still working to forgive myself for. There's still people in my life who don't see me as this nice person that you guys, see now. they have a lot of anger towards me, right? And I've had to learn, even if they won't give me that forgiveness, if they're not ready to forgive me, I have to forgive myself. And that's still, an ongoing process. And I've also had to learn to forgive my birth father, for the thing, and I started to do that when I was in prison and recognize, okay, it's not that he didn't like me. He was abused and he had his own pain. He has his own trauma. Unfortunately, he died of a drug overdose last summer after struggling with drug addiction his whole life. Shout out to Troy Bros. Thank you for what you did. And despite never being in my life, he did give me the ability to learn what forgiveness means. And I'm very, very grateful for that, thankful for that. So it's important for us to understand, despite what we have done in the past, despite what we may have done to other people, it doesn't mean you get a blind pass. It doesn't mean everybody's just going to openly welcome you back with open arms. But it's important to start that path of forgiveness, again, for yourself and for other people. There's no reason to hold on to that pain and to that. All it does is weigh you down, and it fills you with blind anger. And you know who comes and takes advantage of that? The state, the corporations, the people who are feeding you. Because if you haven't recognized yet, this is the most important real estate in the world. I know they're selling properties out here and everything. This is the most important real estate. They can't sell you anything better than this space right here in your skull. And everybody's always trying to get in that space. Whether it's the YouTube ads, whether it's marketing on TV. I'm trying to get in your head space right now for positive reasons. Other people have other intentions, right? So if you are the one in control, and if you are the one able to forgive yourself, then you can do anything. I mean, really, nobody can stop you, right? But once you let them in, then you let that doubt, and it takes over. It does take over. It takes over. It's very paralyzing. Life can become much more difficult. Action, probably one of the most important things we're going to get into. I put out a video a couple days ago called "Social Media Activism is Not Enough. It's Time to Act." Who here agrees with that statement? Thank you. Now, who here has changed their Facebook profile as a form of activism? Who here has posted a meme? I'm not saying these things don't have an effect, right? Obviously, if it wasn't for social media, we probably would have never connected in the way we have. But also, I'll be on a panel after this talking about independent media censorship. My work has grown because of social media. I've been able to do 2 US tours because of social media, but also it's a weak point. It's not enough, right? So many people, I think, are content to even just to come to these conferences. These are beautiful experiences, right? And I speak at events like this all over the world. I'm going to speak in the jungle in Costa Rica in 2 weeks, right? Beautiful people coming together, having a good time, parties, celebrations, workshops. But none of this matters if when you go home, nothing changes. If that's the case, then let's just drop all the pretenses and admit we just came here to party. Let's be real, right? But if you really came here to change the world, to change yourself, to get some knowledge, to get some information, to take it home and to change your community and then to inspire other people, because that's all I'm doing, being inspired by people, taking action, inspiring other people, being re-inspired by them. You guys all inspire me. Every one of you that comes over to my table and says, "Hey, thank you, you did this," you're giving me fuel to keep going. On the days when I feel burnt out and I can't do this anymore, I'm done, I'm sick of this. Somebody sends an email and okay, I can't give up. You gotta keep going, right? Can't give up. We can never give up. So it's about taking action. Words are not enough. I'm sorry, my friends. Words are not enough. Even my books are not enough. Talks are not enough. We got to get connected to our communities, localized. We'll get there in a second, right? I'm winding down on time. Hurry up. Acceptance. Acceptance is the next level, right? So this one is a tricky one because when I started to develop the ideas of the conscious resistance, when I got out of prison, I was already into meditation, then I started to have my kind of wake up in the political world. So I had my activist friends and I had my spiritual kind of consciousness meditation friends. And for a long time I was living 2 lives because I would go to my activist friends and say, "Hey guys, I'm going to meditation tonight. Anybody want to come?" And they're like, "What are you talking about, you crazy hippie?" Or, "Are you on drugs?" Or just weird things like that. And then I'd go to my friends in the spiritual circles and say, "Hey, have you heard about this police state they're building? Have you heard about 5G?" Or just whatever topic I was interested in. And they're, "Don't talk about it. You're going to manifest it. Don't talk about it. Keep it quiet. Don't bring up the bad things." And so for 2 years, I was like, okay, I guess I'll just do these different worlds. And then finally, I realized when the phrase "the conscious resistance" came to me, there is no separation. There's no separation as much as we would like it to be. So when I talk of acceptance, I'm not just saying, accept these people are in control and we can do nothing. There's plenty of people who are woke, awake, they know what's going on, but they've resigned themselves to apathy. Well, the Rothschilds control everything, the bankers control everything. Crypto, that's controlled. Acapulco, that's controlled. There's nothing we can do. Might as well just sit at home and just cry or just be angry, right? I refuse to go that route. Yes, we have a huge, insurmountable task ahead of us. We have the technology and the knowledge that all the past generations have had, technology they've never seen before. We have the opportunity to do something amazing. But god dang, it's scary. It's scary to even take that first step and to imagine that you could help other people because you're afraid to fail, right? So we have to accept nature as is for what the world is, but also accept that we can play a role in it as well. It's not blind acceptance, it's not obedience, and it's not giving up. Localize your actions. So this is also equally important. Focus locally. We're all coming from different parts of the world, right? We can connect and exchange numbers and things like that, exchange social media, but at the end of the day, you're the one going home to your community. Not me, not them, only you. So if each of us go home and again, localize, the most local you can go is in your own heart and your own mind. Work on your own local trauma here, work on your local community, get to connect with other people. That's where you're gonna see the most effect. One more. All right, and then we get to, I gotta start moving. We get to healing, and again, some of these are, as you're gonna see, are just ongoing processes that never stop, right? Healing isn't like, okay, I went to my ayahuasca retreat, I'm just gonna ruin it for you guys who are going to ayahuasca. You're not gonna be totally healed afterwards. You're gonna get some medicine. I will share some insights to you and make you, look at some things. But that's not how it works. There's no meditation retreat you can go to, no 10-day ceremony or sweat lodge or Sundance or combo or, mushroom, healthy dose of mushrooms can heal you. And not one single conversation. It's an ongoing thing. And maybe, I'm sure others may disagree. Maybe they think they've got the secret formula. But a friend of mine, she might be here, Carrie Wedler, she talked about something called spiritual bypassing, how plenty of people will hop from one spiritual modality to the next. And they're not actually doing the work. They're just like, well, this week I'm doing ayahuasca. Oh, this week I'm doing hypnotism. This week I'm doing the cryogenic thing. This week I'm doing... And it's all nice, but have you stopped to just be with you and look what's going on inside? Maybe you're avoiding it through all the spirituality. Because to me, this movement, this anarchist, spiritual, crypto, psychedelic, all the merging that's going on, it's much bigger than wearing the right costume, having the right jewelry, saying the right things. It's your own individual journey, right? So be more than just a costume, be more than just a fad or a fashion statement. If you came here for healing, get your healing. And face your shadows, face your demons, face your dragon, as some people. Don't be afraid to face your faults. I just laid mine out in front of all you guys. It's gonna be recorded, it's gonna go online. Fuck it, right? You gotta put it out there. And harmonize. To me, this means to harmonize our beliefs, to live in line with your principles, right? Because as I said earlier, you can talk a big game, but then actions are where it matters, right? Because you can be out here and say, yeah, I'm an anarchist, I fuck the state, this and that. But when you go home, look at the actions you're taking and what your lifestyle contributes to. Not so that me or anyone else can judge, but so you can have, again, that holistic, honest self-assessment and say, okay, wow, I'm actually contributing to some of the problems that I'm very much against. So harmonizing means to live in line with your principles, to opt out of the systems that do not align with your values. And that's what my workshop tomorrow is going to go even further into, is how to opt out of the state system, the corporate system. And if you can, don't use banks. Stop using banks. How many people are using banks? No judgment, but why? Ask yourself why. The banks, more than 10 years ago, robbed people around the world. And look back the last 100 years, they've been robbing us blind, yet we're still putting our money in their systems. We have alternatives. We've got credit unions, we got mattresses, we got crypto, we got all kinds of other ways. We got all sorts of ways to store assets, buy tools, do whatever, right? But why? Why would we continue to support the institutions that enslave us or work to enslave us? We have to ask ourselves that, right? And if you can, stop fucking paying taxes. You're funding the war machine. My brothers and sisters, I say this with all compassion, that somebody who has, I'm not friends with the IRS, that's all I'll say. I've been warned against saying more than that publicly anymore. But if you can, avoid the tax machine. You're funding the war machine. I don't know if you guys saw the article, 7 kids dead in Syria just last week, US airstrike. 7 kids. I know we're all having a good time. Most people forgot that there's wars going on, but every time they take out of your, and it's theft, we know it's extortion, and it's under duress, but find a way to avoid it. That's what agorism and counter-economics, the philosophies that I promote and that my workshops on, are all about, finding ways to avoid that. And even if it's just one little step at a time, take those steps. Empowerment. I think I got 5 minutes, cool. Empowerment, just like it sounds. Choose the relationships that are going to uplift you and help you become the best version of yourself, right? And I don't mean just in the sense of like the partner, your romantic relationship, right? But think about this, every step of your life, every interaction is a relationship. The fact that you're choosing right now to sit here and listen to me, we have established a relationship with each other. Right now it's one-sided, I'm talking a lot and I'm not letting you speak, I apologize. But this is a relationship, and maybe we'll build upon it afterwards. We'll get to sit down and talk some further, right? But you have a relationship with your bank. You have a relationship with the government. You have a relationship, and whether you like it or not, there are relationships that exist in our life, some by choice, some by force. Find a way to only choose the relationships that are uplifting you and helping you become the best version of yourself, because that's the version of yourself that's going to lead you to freedom. Mentally, physically, spiritually. Then we get to community. Again, back to the localization. Localizing your efforts and your actions, because that's where it's going to have the most effect. I have a concept that I've been working on. I stole it from John Bush, who's also a speaker here. It's called freedom cells. Anybody heard me talk about freedom cells before? Thank you. And Max has talked about the full circle. There's a lot of us who are talking about this idea of localizing, decentralized small groups. Freedomcells.org. I would appreciate if all of you check that website out. It's a social media, it's pre-built. Go check it out. I won't spend too much time on it. It's built to help you find people within 5 miles of you, 10 miles of you, 50 miles. What are their interests? What are their skills? Connect. Build these circles, build these cells, whatever you want to call them, hubs, hives. It's time for us to localize and decentralize, because again, if we just sit around and watch them tear the world down and just come here and hang out, I'd like by next Anarchapulco or next year in general, that there are hubs and hives of free people all over the world. If not, then we're failing ourselves. If we're just sitting still and just watching the show. Because this is more than entertainment, you know what I mean? You guys are a part of the show. I know sometimes you watch things on the internet and it feels like you're watching a TV show. This is real life, and you're a part of it. Actualization. Do we ever achieve a state of enlightenment or actualization? I don't really know if that is possible. I mean, some, again, would argue differently, but I do know this, that by aiming for that and striving for constantly to actualizing ourselves, to do all the things I'm laying out here, self-forgiveness, healing, to live in line with your principles, you might experience moments, those moments, and you know those moments, you know what I'm talking about. Everything else disappears, there's that beautiful smile on your face, you feel that energy rising up from the earth, through your legs, up to your heart, and you just want to howl. I mean, that's what I do, maybe you do something else. And when you have those moments, say this to yourself, and when you're having the bad moments too. So this is what it feels like to be alive. Whether it's bad, whether it's good, it's emotion, it's you, and it's a part of the actualization process. So when you're having your good days of meditating for, on end, and you're like, wow, man, I've been facing everything, things are going good, and then life hands you a shit show one day, and you start melting down like, no, I lost it, I thought I had it, I was almost to enlightenment. That's part of your enlightenment too. That's a part of the struggle. Don't run away from the struggles. This is what it's like to feel alive. Remember that. You can have moments of bliss, and they're beautiful, but don't chase them. It's just another drug, trust me. I've tried all the drugs. They don't lead you where you think you're trying to get to. And liberation, complete freedom. Once again, is this possible? Can we live a life where we are sourcing all of our goods, our resources, and our ideas sustainably? We're living in abundance. We're not harming anybody. We're not subsidizing corporate or state power. Is that possible? I don't know, but god dang, I'm going to try. I'm launching an intentional community in 2020, the beginning of it, and I need your help. I've been planning this for 4 years now, and I'm still not there yet, but I know that together, each of us, whether we all choose to live together or live side by side or be inspired by each other, the possibilities are endless. I'm not going to give up until I can have the life that I want. And if that means I got to go live on a one-man island by myself to avoid the rest of you crazy folk, then I guess that's what I'll do. But I want to believe we could do it together. And I know you guys are looking for that. How many of you have posted that meme with Charlie from freaking Always Sunny, like me telling my friends we need to go join an island and create a community, right? We all want something better than what we have now. That's the point. Even if you want to live in suburbia, you want to live in the city, we have different desires, right? But we want something better. And I know we can get it together. And this is what it means to be a holistic anarchist, to be a holistic activist. And I hope that you guys will join me in my effort to create more holistic activists and more holistic anarchists. I've got 30 seconds. I'm going to end the way that I always do. Remind you guys again, I have a film tonight, I have a workshop tomorrow. And if you would join me in my positive affirmation, this has helped lift me up from so many deep depths. It's also on some of my shirts. I think you guys will enjoy it. Repeat after me if you feel inclined. Thank you for your time. I am powerful. Oh no, let me hear you. I am powerful. I am powerful. I am beautiful. I am beautiful. I am free.